Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Premier Sim Gaming League's YouTube channel. It is the turn of the PS4 F7 League to take centre stage here for round 10 around the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the Mexican Grand Prix. My name is Jake, and I hope you're all having a great day. And with just 19 points separating the top 5 in the championship, we have an absolutely crucial race here in statistically what is the most wide open title fight in the entirety of PSGL season 27. That's across all leagues. So pretty exciting stuff here. And before we get stuck into tonight's action, let's have a quick recap in terms of looking back on last week's race. Of course, we raced at Austin last week. An interesting race where Bryn continued his recent excellent form by taking his second win in 3 races, fending off Morgan, who has become the new championship leader after taking second, which was surprisingly, especially given his sort of pace he tends to run at, his first podium in 5 races, which is, for someone of his pace, I would say is a huge shock. So, yeah, not too good in terms of his form, but he is now leading the championship, while Free Gloves kept his championship hopes alive too, as he took the final spot on the podium with a top 5 completed by Game Freaker and TNR Jonas. We've got the first few cars out on track in this qualifying session. Try and find out who is furthest along their outlap, and what on earth? Well, Sam's in the wall. Let's go on board. Let's try to find, let's have a look. Yeah, we'll go on board with Mark, who's quite early out on track in the McLaren on soft tyres. Definitely a driver worth keeping an eye on. In terms of the championship, coming into this final, final 3 races of the season, Morgan holds a 3-point lead over Felix. TNR Jonas is third, now 10 points off Morgan in the lead, but it is worth noting that Jonas is one of the drivers missing this evening, so that's going to put a big dent in his title hopes. And then you've got Free Gloves in 4th place, 18 points off the lead, with Bryn a further point behind. But it's worth noting that Bryn is probably the most informed driver in F7 right now, so that's definitely worth keeping an eye on, as if he continues that sort of form, he's going to be a huge threat. There's definitely plenty of potential situations that could happen here tonight. The title cannot be decided here. But this race could be one that we look back on at the end of the season as being a big part of it, as Mark invalidates his lap. I'll go on board with Vando Viz, who looks like he went way off track there, unless I just caught it at the wrong angle, but still fine on his lap. In terms of the Constructors' Championship as well, that's also super close. Ferrari's still in the lead, but they only have an 8-point lead now over Red Bull, who, it has to be said, certainly in recent races have been in much better form. They have outscored Ferrari in 3 out of the last 4 races, so they're definitely closing in that gap. In terms of potential other teams who could challenge, you're looking probably at Racing Point, although neither driver in the Racing Point is here this evening, so that probably ends their hopes. And then you got Alfa Romeo and Williams, but probably it is going to be between Ferrari and Red Bull, as Bryn does a 114.7 on the medium tyres for now. So it'll be interesting to see. That won't be a pole position lap time. We're expecting probably into the low to mid 13s is what I would say would be what a sort of pole position time I would expect. Felix is about to come across the line now to do a 13.7. That's the first real benchmark time we've seen put in there. And now Friends is coming up through the final sector, of course. Let's give you a little background about the venue for tonight's race. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez debuted on the Formula 1 calendar way back in 1962, but has only been used in its current layout since making its return in 2015. 2.67 miles make up this circuit, with 17 turns, 7 to the left and 10 to the right, and a lap record set by Valtteri Bottas in 2018 on a 118.7. There are 2 DRS zones to promote overtaking. The first of these going down the mammoth 3/4 of a mile pit straight that you've just riding on board with there with the AlphaTauri. and the other between turns 11 and 12, which leads us into the carnival-like atmosphere at a Parasol Stadium section. And the question is, who will triumphant tonight in this absolutely critical F7 race? It's a quick rundown in terms of who isn't here this evening. As I mentioned, both Racing Point drivers aren't here. We're also missing Oogie, Marcus, Nick Mania and Dimsky. We do have reserve Sam, who is in the Mercedes. So we'll just see how he gets on. Obviously he was a full-time driver earlier on in the season, so we know that he's very capable of performing at this level. I also want to say kind of a well done almost to Game Freaker, who is racing tonight, despite the fact that he has recently been diagnosed with COVID. So I'm sure all of us at PSGL wish him a speedy recovery. But looks like the symptoms aren't too bad at the moment, because he is here racing, and massive credit to him for that. Morgan did do a 13.5, but he invalidated, so that lap time doesn't count. Krenz now quickest, a 10th ahead of Felix, who of course is returning this evening after missing the last two races. He had a pretty comfortable championship lead before that, but now he's 3 points adrift of Morgan. And in terms of outright pace, I would argue that Morgan's a bit quicker, but consistency was really where Felix was shining before those two races off, and it'll be interesting to see how he sort of comes back from that now. Maybe a couple of weeks away may have ruined his rhythm slightly. He's been on the podium in 6 out of the 7 races he's taken part in F7 this year, and it was that consistency that put him up towards the top end of the championship. This is probably your most unlikely championship contender, I would say, because Free Gloves has kind of gone under the radar at times this season. You look for his results, he has the 1 win in Monza, which sort of stands out, but then you look, he's got a podium in Austin last time out, he's got a lot of top 5 finishes, but as I say, only the 2 podiums, so it really has been consistency from Free Gloves that's put him into this position. But he probably needs to score quite heavily in these next 3 races if he's really going to challenge, because he is 18 points adrift at the moment. He comes across the line here though, and he goes quickest, so that's a nice lap from Free Gloves. 13.5, nicely done. And we'll follow now Tim Matz, who's just coming through the Parasol as well. And coming round this final corner, used to be a lot more daunting back in the day before the stadium section was added. It's Paratalda. But he goes 5th for now, Tim Matz, 6/10 off the outright pace. You can see there the times, all the top 6 doing their laps on the soft tyres, while those behind on the mediums, so that's the state of play at the moment. Mark has gone up into 4th. And Bryn, after doing an early banker on the medium tyre, now goes onto the soft tyre. See what he can do, and as I mentioned, he's won 2 of the last 3 races. He really has massively improved over the course of his season, and he could again be one of the front runners here. A lot of people, certainly in the build up to this, expecting Bryn and Morgan to be sort of standout drivers here this evening. Certainly those in the F7 field worried these two may run away with it. And is Bryn's lap time about to back that up? A massive moment there through the stadium section, but hung on to it well. And it's looking like this is going to be a very nice lap indeed. What does this do for Bryn? Across the line he goes, and he does indeed go on to pole. Provisional pole position for Bryn, a 13.3, a 10.5 clear of Free Gloves, and that's a nice early benchmark set down by the Red Bull driver. And what can the others do to respond to that? We shall see. I believe we've got Bando Biz on a lap, but he has invalidated. Felix is on another lap. He's just started it, so I'll follow Hulkenberger around first, and then we'll go on board with Felix. So Hulkenberger through the first sector, literally just in the 27s. Couldn't be any much less further into them if he tried, but still on the lap and on the soft tyres. Hasn't been the season I don't think Hulkenberger would have wanted. Consistent results have been lacking, it has to be said. Just 9 points to his name, and 8 of those came in the second round at Silverstone, so he's only actually scored 1 point since then, and he's only missed a couple of races. So for a driver of Hulkenberger's experience and obvious talent, it's not been the season he would have hoped for. Of course, him and Game Freaker were Constructors Champions last season here in F7, and there's no doubt about it, they are not going to be defending that title this season. Hulkenberger across the line is a 14.6, they'll need to find a little bit more pace than that. For sure. What's Felix up to? He's on a better lap. This could potentially challenge up towards the front of the grid, and it puts him up to second. A 13.4, super close. Mark has he crashed out, or has he retired in the pit lane? I think he may have retired in the pit lane, so Mark obviously feeling happy with the lap he's done, and decides to stick with it. Trying to see who is out there at the moment on a lap. Friends is one driver out. He's a 10th down through the first sector though on what he did previously, and his first lap time was pretty good. Now through the S's section, it's a really nice, fun, flowing section. When you get the car exactly as you want it, it's a lovely sort of section of track to drive. Friends currently in 4th place, and can he improve on that? Obviously not had too many races here in F7 up to now, Friends. He's still a relative newbie to the league in that thing. He's done 3 races up to now with wildly differing results as he does improve his lap time but stays in 4th place. Gone board with Sam now, who's on a better lap as well. Yeah, very differing results so far. He DNF'd from his first race, got 2nd at Singapore, and then finished the race in Austin but didn't actually score. So, you know, he's had a podium but then other 2 not so good races around that, as Powdy moves up to 5th on a 13.9. Is Sam about to go ahead of him though? Yes, he does. A 13.8 from Sam. That time's coming in thick and fast now. We've only got 6 minutes left in qualifying, and we've still got 4 drivers out there who have yet to put in a representative time. Although it is worth wondering, are some drivers just going to stay in the pits and almost take the option of a differing strategy? Because, like I say, with only 15 drivers here, it makes sense perhaps to try a slightly alternate strategy because you won't be too impacted on it on the grid. It's a 36 lap race, of course, and if you do start on softs, it does make the one stopper very tricky indeed, whereas if you can start on mediums, you should be able to make a one stopper work pretty well. It's a pretty easy track to overtake on those. If you've got the pace to make 2 stops work, you're probably not going to lose out too much in terms of time. We've got 2 very close fights. I suspect in F7 both the Constructors and the Drivers' Championships are going to go down to the final race. It's just that close at the moment, so I suspect I can't see that really going any other way. I'd be shocked if either championship got sealed before we get to Japan in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously we've got Abu Dhabi next week. Let's follow Tim Matz then around a lap. We're just caught, unfortunately not caught to first part of the lap, but now down towards turn 4 at the end of sector 1. It's a much better first sector from Tim Matz on this occasion. This double apex right-hander, very tricky, but well, got to make sure you don't impact on traction too much. And now through this SS section, which is without doubt for me the most fun part of the track. Easy to invalidate your lap here if you're not careful, but that was really nicely done from the Red Bull driver, and I suspect this could be a good improvement from him. It's not actually as good of a middle sector as I thought it was going to be. Now through the stadium section, returns 15, 16, and now to the parasol, but he has invalidated, and that will, I think that will annoy him because he could have gone on, well, look at that, he's with 13.8 across the line, so he would have gone 5th. But unfortunately for him, that lap time invalidated. But Paco Suarez, Morgan and Game Freak are still in the pits and yet to put in a lap. So interesting. But now it's a pretty quiet state of affairs on track at the moment. We've got a TV Sen here on a lap in the Ferrari, pushing right up to the limits of the curbs there. That must have been super close to an invalidation, but got away with it thankfully. He's on a much better lap though, so if he can keep this going, I think he did his initial lap on the medium compound tyre, so this should be a sizable improvement and put him into the 1 minute 13s as long as he gets that done nicely. Hulkenberger session's done. I think he's retired in a pit lane as well. TV Sen across the line, up to 3rd. Very nice effort indeed. Found 1.7 seconds on his medium tyre lap and goes up to third. He's only half a tenth off pole position. So what we've seen from Brennan sometimes in terms of the margins he has over other drivers, we're not seeing here. Of course, this is a shorter lap, just 73 seconds, so that can have some impact on it. Tom AJ is out mediums. Is Tim Max going for another lap? No, he's not. He's entering the pits. So just follow Tom AJ then in the Haas. Out on medium tyres. Guessing he does want to start on them and just potentially get on the grid ahead of anybody who decides not to go out, which at the moment still Morgan and Game Freak are in the pits. Game Freak has now switched to medium tyres as well, so he may be thinking of doing the same thing. And Morgan, who is a current championship leader, hasn't yet to, I think he went out earlier, but invalidated his lap, and then we've not seen him since then, so he's either playing it very cool, leaving it till the last few seconds, or he's got something up his sleeve in terms of strategy here. Tom AJ he's not even improving. He's 4 tenths down through the second sector on his previous effort, so I'm not expecting too many improvements here. We've got a lot of drivers out there preparing for their final laps. Now just the 4 guys in the pits. Morgan is out on track, so he's potentially thinking of doing a Sebastian Vettel here and leaving it right till the last few seconds of qualifying to get the lap time in. It's a very risky strategy. It could easily go wrong for him. And Paco's invalidated his latest effort, so of course a very difficult season for the driver. The Spaniard not had things his own way really this season. Previous F7 race winner, but as of yet just hasn't really found the pace or the consistency. He had a real horror show last week at Austin, which I'm sure he'll want to put firmly to the back of his memory. And let's have a look then. Who is about to start a lap? Got Game Freaker first, but who's that behind him? Is that Morgan? It's Powdy. So we'll go on board with Powdy then, who is out on another set of soft tyres to see if he can improve on what is currently 7th place for the Alfa Romeo driver. Let's go on board with him then as he breaks down into turn 1. Oh, and he's invalidated already. That's going to be a huge blow for him. And that's the end of his qualifying session. Who have we got after that? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's Sam. There, we've gone board with Mercedes driver. He won't be getting overtaken by Powdy now. That's Powdy's last effort ruined. And Sam is marginally up in the first sector, and we're talking very fine margins here. And he needs 3 tenths really to get up to the next group of cars. 10 seconds left of qualifying. I hope those guys towards the back have timed their runs right, otherwise they might not be able to get to the checkered flag in time. TV Sen is not going to make it. TV Sen has mistimed his final run, and he will not improve on his current 3rd place time, so bit of a misjudgment there from Ferrari. Bryn improves, a 13.0 from Bryn. Where's he found that from? Right at the closing stages of qualifying. That's a great effort from him. It looks like Game Freaker invalidated, and Sam improves, but he stays in 6th place. Felix is in the final sector of the lap. Doesn't look like he's going quick, so let's go on board with a championship leader then. Morgan. His only effort in qualifying. We'll keep an eye on what's going on around him. Prenz has moved up to 4th. Right at the depth. Bando Biz hasn't done a lap time. What's Morgan got right at the depth here? 1:13.0 from Bryn to beat. Can Morgan do it? No, he doesn't, but he goes second. A 13.1 right at the closing stages of qualifying. And I think Tim Matz is the only driver out there now who might improve. Currently only 10th for him. He's already guaranteed to start on soft tyres, so he might as well just see what this lap does for him. Currently in P10. He's going to improve, but is it enough? He goes up to 8th, so he improves by a couple of slots and goes into the top 10. But it is Bryn who takes pole position for the Mexican Grand Prix. Fair play to the Red Bull driver. He had a really good session there, putting a blinding lap at the end, and Morgan could not quite match it. And everyone's prediction of Bryn and Morgan taking up the front row and maybe potentially having their own private battle in this race doesn't look too far from the truth. But here is the grid then. We've got Bryn in first, Morgan joins him on the front row. Felix in third. TB Sen, great effort from him in fourth and really helps out Ferrari in the constructors. Prenz is fifth. Free Glove sixth. Sam with a solid effort in seventh. Tim Matz in eighth. Powdy's in ninth. Mark is in 10th, although in some suggestions he may have left the session. I'm not too sure about that. Outside top 10, you got Hulkenberger in 11th. Tom AJ in 12th. And then Bando Biz, Paco and Game Freaker not setting any lap times at all. That is your grid for the Grand Prix. I'll be back with you in a few seconds. Welcome back to coverage of the PSGL F7 Mexican Grand Prix. We're just a few moments away from lights out here, and it does look like Mark has left the session and not rejoined. So unfortunately that does mean we're down to 14 drivers, which is a real shame, especially for Mark, because he did qualify inside the top 10, so he could have had potentially a very good showing here tonight, but for whatever reason, I'm sure we'll find out afterwards, not to be. But we've potentially got a very good battle here, and I tell you what, having the top two in the championship, second and third, and Bryn, of course, who is kind of the outsider for the championship, on pole position. It's a very interesting lineup with your other championship contender, Free Gloves, in a pretty good slot 2 in 6th. So it'll be interesting to see how this race develops. Let's have a look at the tyres for those outside the top 10 have opted to start on. No surprise really, everyone at the exception of Paco Suarez opting to start on medium tyres. Well, Paco decided to start on softs, which I'm a little bit confused by, but we'll see how it plays out for him later on in the race. Blue skies above Mexico tonight, so at the moment at least no threat of rain, but we all know that can change in an instant on these Co-Masters games, so we'll keep an eye out for that. Good evening, Alpha. Pleasure to have you in the chat. It should be a great race ahead of us, and it's going to be interesting to see if Bryn can convert pole into what will be a third win in 4 races for him, and all of a sudden puts him right in the championship hunt. Out of nowhere, really. About 5 races ago, Bryn wasn't even really in consideration to be involved in a title fight, but his just recent form has gone skyrocketed up. But he's got the 2 main contenders right behind him, Morgan and a returning Felix. This is going to be a really intriguing 36 laps ahead here. And who is going to claim a crucial win? 2 races to go after this week. And of course, let's not forget the constructors fight as well to keep an eye on during the race. It's very much Ferrari versus Red Bull, and both teams in pretty solid positions on the grid. So this could be a big point swing one way or the other, depending how this 36 laps goes. Drivers then are lining up on the grid. How will Bryn's nerves be? He's getting into this position more often now, but it still doesn't make it any easier when you're lining up on the grid. With 14 drivers on the grid, Mark will be just driven around by an AI because he's left the session and not rejoined, but we've still got plenty to watch out for here then. So when the lights go out, we'll be underway here at Mexico. The lights have stopped illuminating. Let battle commence. It looks like a pretty good start from both members of the front row. Bryn's got away really well, and Felix looks like he may have had the jump on Morgan's. His slightly sluggish start from him as they head down to turn 1. Bryn's comfortably into the lead. Felix and Morgan going side by side, the 2 championship contenders. Who's going to get the position? There's a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact between the pair. Looks like Felix has got the better drive and takes P2. So Morgan down to P3. His teammate further behind him. Looks like we've got Free Gloves potentially putting the fight squeeze on the 2 Ferraris, although it might be Sam as well, who's had a pretty good getaway. but it's Bryn who leads away. Felix into second, the two Ferraris lying astern in third and fourth. Prenz has had a pretty sluggish start, he's down to 7th. And then you got Paco Suarez up to the top 10. And Bando Biz on the medium tyres making good headway in the opening stages of a race. But Bryn has had the ideal start that he would have wanted. He's got away really well. And we're looking out further behind, we've got Free Gloves going around the outside into the stadium section on Sam. What an overtake that is. That's an absolutely superb move from Free Gloves, and that now means that all 5, well, we've got 4 of the 5 championship contenders here tonight, and all 4 of them are in the top 5 positions, so this is exactly what we want to see. Oh, that's just the timing, no need to worry about that. I was about to say, I thought Felix was dropping down the field, I thought Morgan was dropping down the field. Sam's in the pits, so I wonder if Sam's collected some damage, and that might explain why he was under so much pressure from Free Gloves. He goes on to hard compound tyres, which won't take him to the end, but will certainly get him a long way into it. Potentially could open up some strategy options later on, especially if we have any safety car periods. Got to say right now, Bryn looking comfortable at front. Morgan's actually coming under a bit of pressure from his teammate, but I don't know. I don't know how much the two of them communicate with each other, so you know, this is going to be interesting here. What you would expect to happen is that TV7 wouldn't really challenge his Ferrari teammate, but he may have other ideas. Like I said, I didn't think Prenz was that far behind, just waiting for the gaps to sort themselves out on that one. Tim, I've got to say, one driver who's had a very nice start, considering the fact he's starting on mediums, is Bando Biz. He's really made good work of that. We've got a spinner further down, that's Hulkenberger, who's had a spin in the Renault. He's got damage as well on his front wing, so that's a bitter blow for him, and not what he needed at all, as his kind of horror season continues. Just receiving updates from Mark as to why he hasn't been able to take the start of the race. Unfortunately, it looks like he's had a power cut in his area, so that's a real shame for him, and it would have been interesting to see what he could have done, because his opening benchmarking qualifying was really strong. What's going on here? I think Paco's had a problem. Yep, Paco off the track, and looks like he's got damage too, so another driver who just hasn't had the season he would have wanted, and he'll have to return to the pits and get a new front wing. So some action happening further down the field, but let's focus on this intriguing battle for P2 at the moment. And let's actually follow on board with Morgan as we go through the S's and out to the Parasol, the stadium section. Of course, this is where all the Checo fans will converge on a race weekend to cheer on their local hero. And it's really the best seat in the house to see F1 cars close up at slow speeds as they thread their way through that technical section of track. Bryn still leading pretty comfortably at the moment, 1.5 second lead. Felix into second, and the two Ferraris hovering close by, but not really in a position to attack just yet. Looks like we've got another pit stop as well. Tim Matz is into the pits. So, looks like he may have collected some damage. I'm just going to try and find what's going on there. Has he gone onto another set of softs? That'd be a very surprising decision if he has. But it looks like indeed he has. So that's a bit of an odd one, got to be honest. But he's gone onto another set of softs, and we'll see how his race develops from there. But yeah, it could be a bit of an odd strategy call, that one. I don't know if it was something he wanted to do. I'm sure we'll hear from him afterwards on that one. And we've got Morgan now all over the back of Felix. Although I've got to say, he didn't have a particularly great stadium section there. Looked like he was struggling the car, just understeering left, right and centre, and that's allowed Felix to pull away. We're sort of seeing gaps forming throughout the field at the moment, with the two Ferraris really being the closest challengers. But for Felix, I don't think he'll be too disappointed with how that start's gone. You know, right now Bryn is just a bit too quick, but he's not really been hounded as much by the Ferraris as he may have thought he would have done. And it's probably what you need after a couple of races out, is just a nice, carefree, not under too much pressure sort of start to get yourself back into the swing of things, because you know, it's only a couple of weeks that you've missed, but it can be quite easy to lose that racing edge, if you like, as Bando Biz continues his really excellent start on mediums and moves past Powdy up into 7th place. So keep an eye out for Bando Biz here, because he's on a potential one-stop and he's not lapping too as slowly as you figured he might be at the start on those medium tyres. So obviously we'll see how his strategy develops as we go through the race, but it could be a little interesting one, as we've got Paco having yet more problems in the stadium section. Has he got more damage? Doesn't look like he has. Just had a spin further down. It's just not working out for him for one reason or another. Like I said, he's a race winner in F7. He's no mug, but just this season hasn't found that same rhythm. Ben's still leading the way. Felix looks like he's starting to peg him back a little bit this lap, with Morgan following close behind, and Morgan just starting to drop his teammate ever so slightly. His teammate's now lost the DRS advantage on the back of his teammate, and that could be quite costly as Sam picks up a penalty. One of the drivers who stopped early on, so really the top 10 now of the drivers who are kind of in the same race as each other. But what's making Bando Biz's drive so far very remarkable is that he's comfortably quicker than the other two medium runners of Game Freaker and Tom AJ, who just can't lap at that same sort of pace. So Bando Biz one to look out for here, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if he can catch up to his teammate, as Tim Masters the fastest lap of the race. Not too much surprise there on those soft tyres. Morgan once again really close as he comes into the S's, but is he going to once again struggle through his S's section in comparison to Felix in front of him? He is. So that S's section is proving quite difficult to follow at the moment. Either that or Felix maybe just going for a slightly more high downforce setup, which is allowing him to pull away. And you're seeing now TB Sen is really dropping off the back of his teammate, and Bryn has maybe got the hurry up a bit because he's back on it now and has built the gap to over 2 seconds over Felix. We've got Free Gloves potentially looking at a move on the Ferrari now as he starts to close in. And further behind we've got the two Alpha Tauris as well. Prenz as well is sort of tagging along the Free Gloves. And TV said after a bright start, just maybe starting to struggle a little bit as those soft tyres start to wear. We can find often some drivers can cope better with tyres as they degrade, whereas others tend to struggle. And right now at this stage of a Grand Prix, TV Sen is looking the most vulnerable to attack from behind. And this will be important for Free Gloves as well. If he does have aspirations of a title, he kind of needs to be with the three guys up front, so it's an important thing overtake that he may have to pull off here. Receiving some information that Morgan is on pad. That will explain some reasons to why he does struggle through that middle sector of the lap. Nevertheless though, he's looking a little bit closer on this lap to Felix than he was doing previously, so could put the driver under a little bit of pressure here. Felix down the pit straight. He's not, I don't think he's close enough just yet. Of course this is a mammoth pit straight, but he's going to run out of straight before he can get close enough. But it definitely is the closest he's been for a long time. And if he can get a good run out of this little chicane here, he could potentially have a think about a move. But again, just looks like Felix has a bit of an advantage through the twisty parts of the track due to the difference in configuration that they use. Obviously Morgan on the pad and Felix using the wheel. And no doubt about it in my mind, TV Sen is probably going to come under significant pressure now from Free Gloves and Prenz. Bando Biz not quite keeping up with him at the moment, but he's still lapping pretty solidly on those medium tyres. I would say he's definitely keeping himself in contention later on. We've got Free Gloves here then. Like I say, a driver who, without being all too dramatic over the course of the first 9 races, has found himself very much in championship contention. So we've got a problem further down. Well, no, I think Tim Master just overtaken Sam. We've got a pit stop here, so Felix is into the pits on the end of lap 8. We are getting to that sort of pit stop window now, and it will be 2-stop strategies that these guys will be running, because there's no way that those mediums will get to the end from the estimated life of the medium tyres is roughly 17 laps, and we're still 27 laps to run. That's not going to be a viable strategy. But for Felix now, I'm guessing the strategy that he will be going for is soft, medium, soft. Maybe he might go for 2 medium stints. I guess it just depends how he feels on these tyres. But he's taken the plunge, gone for the early stop, and he'll now try and see what he can do on fresh tyres. Let's follow Free Gloves through the stadium not through the S's section rather, as he continues to hound that Ferrari in front of him. He's pretty content where he is at the moment in terms of ERS available to him. I think Free Gloves does have a bit more available to him right now, so if he can get a good run out of this final turn in the Perro-Tauda, he may have a run into a straight. But TB Sen has opted to pit, but that's a problem. Oh no, that's all gone wrong at Ferrari. More pit stop calamity for the team, as TB Sen will lose a few precious seconds here while his team get reorganised. I don't think a double stack was planned, and that's really cost TB Sen there massively. And that's going to give an advantage to the likes of Free Gloves and Prens, who were behind him at the time. Real lack of communication there, I suspect. As Bryn also pitted from the lead and rejoins in front of Felix, which is a crucial thing for him. And just by staying out that one extra lap, you can see that Morgan has really drifted away from Felix, now 2.5 seconds behind. So we'll see how that develops. Felix, though, didn't get the jump on Bryn, but I think he'll be quite happy with how that's turned out, all things considered. TB Sen definitely won't be, and he's gone for another set of soft tyres. Was that his call, or was that the only tyres the team had available to them at the time? I mean, it's definitely not too much of a problem. He can then run mediums at the end, but you can see the amount of time he's lost to his teammate. He was around 3 seconds behind him previously. He's now 7.5, so Free Gloves and Friends can probably afford to pit at the end of this lap and still jump the other Ferrari. Well, they're even taking it a step further than that. They decided not to pit yet, as Felix does the fastest lap of the race, but he's not really gained on Bryn, so I think that's just while Bryn obviously is a lap behind in terms of the fact that he will only be starting his first proper lap out the pits now. But nevertheless, good lap from Felix, and he's holding the gaps pretty nicely at the moment, which I don't think he'll mind. Although he has just got a penalty, which is quite crucial, it has to be said. It's not what you want to be doing. Obviously, this is another track where penalties are going to occur, but the less you can pick up, the better. And you can see now the effect of the soft tyres and how much they're degrading is really telling, because Bando Biz is now really gaining on these guys in front, and I think for AlphaTauri's sake, the best thing to do will be to pull Prens in at the end of his lap for his tyres, as well as the fact that he will be starting to hold up his teammates. Expect to see both these guys potentially pit. Free Gloves stays out, interestingly, as we've got, I think that's problem for Paco towards the back of the grid. Prens pits. And what's going to be interesting here is where does he come out in relation to TB Sen. Obviously TB Sen went for another set of softs, which may benefit him. But of course he lost so much time due to that double stack. This is going to potentially be very close indeed, as Tom AJ and Game Freak could do battle further up on the medium tyres. But yeah, TB Sen's actually kept the position, so just by staying out that little bit longer, it's ultimately worked out. Not too bad for TB Sen, but I think he'll still be annoyed about how that pit lane mess unfolded. Real question now, though, of course, is what is Free Gloves planning? Is he planning a potential one stop here? Because if he can stretch out this stint another lap or two, he could potentially then take hards to the end, and I wonder if that's something he's considering. The only driver out there on hards at the moment is Sam, And of course he was forced into that by some early wing damage. So let's have a look. What's Free Gloves doing at the end of this lap? Yeah, he stayed out again. So yeah, I think he's planning to run a one-stop strategy here and go on to hards. I think that's what he's considering. It would not surprise me at all, and it's strategies like that that have really sometimes put him into contention. So if he can make it work, it shouldn't be too bad for him. Let's follow Bryn as Bryn is starting to come across some traffic in the shape of Game Freaker. He's diving down the inside, and Game Freaker gives him the room, and there's nothing that he can do about it. Into turn one, Bryn makes some pass mate work quite comfortably for him in the end, and moves up to 4th place. But of course he's provisionally leading this race. The guy I want to see now though is Bando Biz, because there's no doubt about it, he'll be in a much better position than Free Gloves right now in terms of tyre wear, and he'll be looking to get that place as soon as possible to of course make his strategy work. It's quite likely here that both these guys will be running one-stop strategies, so this is a battle you may see unfold later on in the race as well. So Free Gloves can keep the AlphaTauri behind him now. It may pay dividends later on. Is Free Gloves going to pit at the end of this lap? Yes, he does. Now I'm very interested to see here what tyres he puts on. And we've got Bryn now right on the back of Tom AJ, and this should be a comfortable move down the pit straight. The RS now open, not using any overtake mode, but he's got so much more grip and traction than that Haas coming out of turn 17. It's going to be a simple move into turn 1. Doesn't even need to dive down the inside or anything like that, as Felix in the background also makes up a place by getting past Game Freaker. So these two making their way through the field very nicely indeed. And it'll be up to Morgan probably in a lap or two to do the same. Obviously these guys running very different races at this stage. In terms of where Free Gloves has rejoined, he's obviously rejoined behind TB7 and Prens, who he was battling with previously. He's gone for the mediums. I'm not sure if that one stop's going to work on that basis, so I'm a little bit puzzled by that. But we'll see, of course. He may try and prove me wrong, get us to the end. But I've got to be honest, this strategy is a bit of a mystery right now. And we'll see how that unfolds for him as Felix. And we've also got, we've got Sam, who's retired in the pit lane, I believe, and Paco has now done the same. So both Sam and Paco unfortunately have retired from the race. We're pretty much down to 12 cars now, of course, because Mark has just been driven around by an AI as Tom AJ pits, as does Bando Biz. And I suspect we're going to see Bando Biz. Well, he's gone for another set of mediums, so he's definitely not one-stopping. Yeah, a lot of people very reluctant to run the hard tyres here, which I'm a little bit surprised by, I have to say, because in terms of the data I've got, there's only half a second of pace difference between the medium and hards, so I think it's a strategy worth running, but obviously I'll leave it up to these guys in terms of what strategy they want to run. But yeah, certainly for those who started on mediums, I'm a little bit surprised by that. Tom AJ's gone for softs, so it does allow the majority of drivers are going for two-stop strategies here today. I tell you, one driver who's probably not benefited from threading his way through the traffic as much is Felix. Morgan only a second behind him again now, so that earlier advantage that Felix picked up with the undercut has kind of been eradicated. But Morgan does have a penalty as well, so both Felix and Morgan have a penalty each. Bryn doesn't as of yet, so that does play into his advantages. But all the top three are slightly beginning to concertina up. Maybe Bryn's not enjoying those mediums as much as some of the guys around him. Bando Biz has rejoined behind Free Gloves. So it's as you were in terms of that battle. Both of them on medium tyres now as Game Freaker pits. And he's going for soft. So yeah, they're really not wanting to run those hard tyres, which I just find a little bit surprising. Like I said, there didn't seem to be much pace difference between them, but obviously maybe Sam has fed through data, but they're not particularly working that well around here. Bit of oversteer there from Bryn. He's probably under the most pressure he's been in all race, but of course he will know that the two guys behind him have penalties, so his main focus should be trying to be on avoiding getting any himself. What have we got happening further downfield? Bando Biz is now past Free Gloves, so yeah, Free Gloves not having the best of laps, it has to be said, because you would have expected with the undercut he would have pulled a lot further clear of Bando Biz, and he's now lost that position and has older tyres on, so I think that's worked out quite well for the AlphaTauri driver, all things considered, and he's not too far behind his teammates still. So yeah, the two AlphaTauris looking in a strong position tonight, and Bando Biz really doing a great job driving from near the back of the grid on mediums. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not sure if it's Free Gloves struggling for pace or more the pace of Bando Biz, because he very briefly had fastest lap before Tom AJ on softs took it away. Nevertheless, a 16.9 on those mediums is a very impressive lap indeed, as he charges down his teammate. He's really closing him in, and I reckon Franz Tost on the pit wall may be thinking, you know, if he gets close enough to Prenz, it's probably worth doing a swap here, because right now Bando Biz is the quicker AlphaTauri driver. In fact, there is no question. Obviously the fresher medium tyres, and he just looks at one with them at the moment, looks really in the zone, and he's quickly chasing Prenz down. Free Gloves is sticking with him as well though, so that could be a three-way battle shaping up. We have got a three-way battle for the lead, but Bryn just about got it under control at the moment with both the track position and the lack of penalties. And Morgan just hovering around Felix's DRS. This has very much become a three-way fight for the win, and let me just quickly remind you of the championship situation at the moment. You've got Morgan in the championship lead on 74 points, you've got Felix on 71, and then you've got Bryn in 5th in the championship on 55, but Bryn has really been the one driver who's been on the best form lately, so even with a 19-point deficit to make up, Bryn is not out of the running here, especially if he wins tonight's race. There's a chance he could cut that gap down as low as around 12 or 13 points going to the last two races, and with the form he's been showing, you cannot rule him out of a championship hunt. So it's looking, at the moment at least, like it's very much between these three you see up front as to who's going to win the championship this year. You've kind of got all the championship contenders in shot. Obviously no Jonas, who was 3rd in the championship, he's not racing tonight. The reigning F7 champion, and Free Gloves only a point ahead of Bryn, and at the moment not in a position to really keep up his championship hunt. And Felix now just within the DRS of Bryn. He hasn't got DRS on this occasion, but if he can stay close enough through the technical middle part of the lap, he'll be able to get it on the run down to turn 12. He's just picked up another penalty though, so the penalties here really adding up and potentially like they could cost him here. Just trying to see, here we go, yeah, 6 seconds. So most of the drivers who've got penalties have got 3 seconds. Hulkenberger has 6, and so does Felix. And a bit surprising actually, Felix usually pretty good with avoiding the penalties, but struggling a bit here tonight. Actually, maybe just that lack of racing over the last couple of weeks might be costing him slightly. As predicted, Bando Biz is right onto the back of his teammate, and I wonder here what AlphaTauri are going to do about this, because I think for the sake of the team right now, it's probably best to swap positions. Obviously, the only thing is Prenz hasn't got a penalty, whereas Bando has, but, you know, pace-wise, it just doesn't make any sense to leave Bando stuck behind his teammate, especially when he could potentially have a look at TB Sen in front, who is going to be starting to lose the best performance out of those soft compound tyres. In fact, he's more than done that, he's pitted. So TB Sen running a very short middle stint there, and he will now run mediums to the end. So that's TB Sen's last pit stop out the way. I'll tell you what, he will have to run much older medium tyres at the end, so he could find himself vulnerable to those AlphaTauris and potentially free gloves as well later on. So he'll have obviously the advantage of the undercut now, but he may lose that later on and regret pitting so early for his second stop. I don't know what's happened up front, but we've been threading away for a traffic, but it's a lapped car and he's been ghosted because it's marked. So for whatever reason anyway, the top three are now very much in the DRS range of each other. And all of a sudden Bryn, who's kind of controlled the race up to this point, is under some significant pressure here. As Bando Biz picks up his second penalty. And as expected, the two AlphaTauris have swapped positions. I don't know if that was an overtake, unfortunately, or whether that was choreographed, but whichever way they did it, they are now the right way round, and Bando Biz can now run in some clear air and see what he can do. And of course he allows then Prens to use his DRS for a bit to fend off free gloves. So AlphaTauri definitely doing the right thing there, whether it was, like I said, whether it was just an overtake or whether it was planned. It's definitely going to benefit both their races in the long run. Of course, Felix has one extra lap as well on his mediums compared to the guys around him, so as well as the fact he has the most penalties, he also has the oldest tyres on, so he could find himself vulnerable here. And he's got to try and stay within that second of a Red Bull driver to minimise the threat from behind. Following through this wonderful S's section. So easy to pick up a warning though, especially when you haven't got the real danger, I suppose, of grass and gravel hanging around those corners. It's not like it's a bit like Suzuka's first sector, but obviously Suzuka's first sector, if you go slightly too much over the curve, the damage caused is potentially a lot worse. We are edging towards the second sort of pit stop window. Probably in the next couple of laps some of these guys might decide to pit. Felix, you'd imagine, would be the first person in, just because he was the first person in last time, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Going to follow free gloves now, who might have a potential run at Prens, who has lost the DRS to his teammate. I don't know how much free gloves, you know, I don't actually hear too much from him, but of course a big integral part of the site when it was running. And yeah, not heard too much from him, but we all know that he is technically in his championship hunt still. But how much does he believe he can win it is another question, because he's kind of gone under the radar. But does that mean he hasn't got the confidence to win it, or does that mean he has and he's just kind of keeping himself on the down low? But you get the feeling if he wants to keep himself in with a shout, this is a move he kind of needs to make. I mean, neither him or Prens have currently got a penalty, so to speak, so that's they're on level playing field with that and on a very similar strategy. But Free Gloves has the fresher tyres at this point, so he needs to be making the most of them if he can. Let's go back to the battle at front. Felix once again with DRS available, but not using overtake. Of course, the DRS opens pretty late down that straight, obviously to not make it too overpowered with how long the straight is, but it does seem to be sometimes minimising the amount of pressure certain guys are under if they're defending. A few small lockups there. We are of course getting towards second pit stop time, so really you're at that point now where you think, you know, screw it, I can have a little lockup here and there. I'll be getting rid of these tyres in a few laps. That's TB Sen, who picked up a penalty, which is worth noting. He's got his first penalty now. He makes his way past Powdy and back up into 9th. Of course, he's the only driver at the moment who's made his last scheduled stop, so he's kind of out of sync with the rest of the field right now. Let's follow Free Gloves on board there through his middle part of the lap. Still behind the AlphaTauri. He's not able at the moment, at least, to find any way past. We've got a yellow flag in sector 3, and that's because Hulkenberger has called it a day in the pit stops. Morgan, though. Interesting, it's Morgan who's called it on the first. This is going to be interesting here, because of course, Morgan was behind Bryn and Felix, but he's jumped the gun early. He's gone for the undercut. And we'll see how that works for him. And that must be a glitch. I've got to assume that's a glitch. Did his car just stop in the pit lane? Well, I think it must have done, because look at that, he's behind his teammate now. So Morgan's had an issue in the pit stop. I don't know what would have caused that. If that's a game error is what I would assume, but that's a real blow for Morgan. He's now completely out of position. He just came to a grinding halt in the pit lane. That's utterly bizarre. Oh, and if championships can be won and lost in moments like that, and he will be absolutely gutted. If this cost him a race, he went for the undercut, but it's absolutely fallen apart for him now. And that removes any threat to these top two. Morgan has been screwed over with something completely out of his control. And that really relieves the pressure off both his front pair. And he will be seething in that Ferrari cockpit right now. He will not be happy at all. And I absolutely cannot blame him for that. As Felix continues on, Bryn goes on to soft tyres and comes out the pits. I mean, just look at the time he's lost though. He was comfortably ahead of his teammates, now behind him. I would say, if I had to guess, he's lost to probably maybe over, I'd say somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds through that error, from that game error. So it just shows how much time he's lost. And like I said, that puts the top two. And I do you know what? I actually think Felix was going to pit on that lap, but I wonder if he's realised what's happened to Morgan and he's potentially delayed that pit stop. There's that an issue for Tim Mats, I think, in the final sector of the lap. Bryn right behind Game Freaker now then. Needs to get this move done quickly, but he might have to follow him through the S's here, which is not going to be ideal for him. He's going to lose some time here. There's no way through here at all. It's very much a single file part of the track, but he should then have the move comfortably done into the parasol. The stadium section, yeah, right round the outside. That's a really nice move from Bryn, and a move he had to make. Felix does indeed stop, so going for one lap fresher softs and potentially thinking he can challenge Bryn in the closing stages. Of course, the penalties though are going to be absolutely going to kill him at the end of the race. In terms of that one, Bryn should rejoin in front, which he does quite comfortably. But of course, the pleasing thing for him is that he's comfortably ahead of Morgan, who is now past his teammate up to 7th. But look, Felix is miles in front. And that really is a shame for Morgan. He was right there with these guys, and I think he's lost around 10 seconds through a game error, which sadly it's just one of those things. But you know, when you're in the midst of a championship fight, it's not what you want to see happen. I'm pretty sure the likes of Bryn and Felix would agree that they don't want to see titles won in that way. Back with Bando Biz, who's currently our race leader, but of course has one more stop to make. Felix has another penalty, so he, tell you what, it's a good job Morgan isn't that close behind him. But actually, looking at it, I'm just thinking, Morgan's less than 6 seconds behind him, but Felix has got 6 seconds more worth of penalties. So there's not... Morgan could still snatch his position ahead of Felix here. Which, obviously I know, would be seen almost as poetic justice for what's happened to Morgan. Bando Biz is pitting. Bando Biz pits. Bryn does the fastest lap of the race. He's absolutely charging. Bando Biz pits, makes his second stop. Where's he going to come out? If I had to guess, he's probably going to come out just behind TB Sen, I suspect. Indeed he does. In fact, he's a bit further behind than I thought he would be. Bryn does pick up a penalty now. Oh, and I think that may potentially anger Morgan even more when he sees that he's got the same amount of penalties as Bryn, because he could have potentially been right up there with that undercut that he tried. So yeah, more pain for Morgan, but he's just got to try and get his head down and salvage what he can, because you never know what can happen in the closing stages of a race. Let's go on board then with Bryn, who's now right behind Prenz. Again, these guys on much older tyres. In fact, I think in terms of Prenz, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in at the end of this lap, but it does mean that unless Bryn can find an imaginative overtake from somewhere, he's got to follow him throughout this section of track. But I don't think he'll mind too much. He knows he's not really under any pressure. He doesn't need to try anything too silly. Prens does indeed pit, so that's the obstacle removed for Bryn. He's back up to second place, and really doesn't look to be much in the way here of stopping him from winning his third in 4 races. Quite a stunning turnaround in form for Bryn, and he's very much in contention. Morgan, you can see probably a bit of anger in that fastest lap that he just put in there, but a very nice lap indeed, as he comfortably remains what will be P3 once Free Gloves makes his second stop. Assuming, of course, that Free Gloves is making a second stop. Like I said, I assumed because he didn't go for hards that he will be making a second stop, but he may prove me wrong on that one. But even if he doesn't make a second stop, I can't see how he can hold any of these 3 guys behind him at bay with much older, worn tyres. Bryn, I think, is probably going to make a move into turn 12 once again here. Look how close he is on the exit. This is going to be quite a straightforward move. There's nothing really A, that Free Gloves can do, and B, I don't think there's any reason for him to really fight it either. Bryn takes the lead of a race once again and is looking firmly on course here to winning once again, and really potentially continuing his late charge for the title. And I have to say, he's just been so impressive of late. His form has been sensational, and you definitely can't rule him out of his title fight here, even though Felix and Morgan have once again driven very solid races too behind him. Although Felix, looking at the gaps, could end up living to regret the amount of penalties he's picked up, because he's hovering around that sort of time frame he's going to need. What he's going to hope for, of course, is that Morgan's soft tyres really start to cost him in the closing laps, because of course they are 2 laps older than Felix's. What's Bando Biz got here? I think he's about to make a move on TB Sen for P5. Here we go, round the outside. This is brave stuff. Oh, and TV7 positions his car in such a way that there's no way through for the AlphaTauri on this occasion, but he's going to try and sneak down the inside. That's not a usual overtaking spot, I have to say, into turn 6, but he makes it stick beautifully, and nothing TV7 could do on the older tyres, and Bando Biz up into 5th, and he really has been a standout performer tonight. I'm not sure he can go anywhere else other than where he is now. It all depends on what strategy Free Gloves is planning to do, but my assumption would be if Free Gloves was going to stop, he would have done it by now. So I don't think he's planning to pit again. Felix cruises past Free Gloves down the pit straight. Again, Free Gloves doesn't need to fight it, he's probably just trying to look after his tyres and bring a car home. Looking at the gaps at the moment and sort of tyre life, if Free Gloves isn't pitting again, it's going to be close between him and Bando Biz on track, I reckon, by the end of the race. I don't think he'll be able to stop Morgan passing him, but of course penalties come into it, and Free Gloves has yet to pick up a penalty. If he can keep that going, there's potentially some very good points on the cards here for him. Potentially Tom AJ, another driver who's gone a bit under the radar so far tonight, but is now running in 7th place, doesn't have to stop again, and he's right on the back of TB Sen, who of course made that early stop for mediums after running 2 soft tyre stints, and I just don't think it's really worked out for him. You can see he just hasn't got the pace to defend now because of that, and he may potentially have friends to worry about a little further down the road. What can Tom AJ do here? He's right on the back of the Ferrari. This could be a quite straightforward overtake. He's on straight into overtake for the pit straight. He's going to be in absolute prime position here to overtake him. Let's go on board with TB Sen, as you'll see the Haas go. You can see it in his mirrors. He's defending to the inside, so he doesn't want to let his position go, but Tom AJ's just got so much more pace. And yeah, he's got to move done before we even get to the corner, so tried his best to defend with the Ferrari driver, but in the end there was no defence for that, and he has to drop down to P7, and he will potentially have an AlphaTauri up behind him very shortly as well. So we're on lap 31 now. Bando Biz has picked up a penalty. What's he on now? That's 9 seconds for Bando. That's not going to do him any favours at all. I think that might make Free Gloves safe here for a potential P4, which it would mathematically keep him in the hunt, but you're looking still at a very big turnaround for him to be a real championship contender in the last few races. But still, it's a good effort from Free Gloves, who is going to make this one stopper work, or he hopes anyway. But those tyres will be so old at the end, and they'll be beyond the predicted life of the mediums. So this is going to be nail-biting stuff on the Alfa Romeo pit wall here to see if Free Gloves can make it to the end. What I don't think is going to be too difficult. Two of the overtakes that we're about to see getting lined up here. We've got Friends now on the back of TV Sen, and then the other Ferrari of Morgan will be soon past Free Gloves, I suspect. Well, once again, Free Gloves going against the grain in terms of strategy. And it's paid off for him. Morgan's picked up another penalty. And I tell you what, that's probably sealed Felix's P2. As long as Felix doesn't pick up any more penalties, I think that might just have rescued Felix's second place here, which is crucial for the championship. And of course, Morgan needs to get 6 seconds in front of Free Gloves, which he might not do as Prenz goes down the inside of a Ferrari into the stadium section. Nothing that TV Sen can do, although he's trying to fight back into the left-hand hairpin. But again, turn 14, but he can't do so. And the position has been gained for Prenz, and TV Sen drops another place down as Morgan is going to get the move done on Free Gloves here. But is he going to be able to gain the 6 seconds that he currently needs to seal P3? This is big moments here in the championship. To put this into context, if Morgan gets P3, he remains championship leader, but if he drops to P4, it will be Felix who retakes the lead in the championship. So this is absolutely critical here as we go to Abu Dhabi next week for the penultimate round. He needs to get 6 seconds on Free Gloves. I think he may just do it. Felix has picked up another penalty. I tell you what, Felix is probably going to get P2 here, but he, from what I'm seeing, he's almost doing his single best effort here to try and throw it away. The advantage of tyres that he's got should mean he could get 6 seconds over Morgan, but yeah, he's not making it easy on himself, and that extra penalty for Felix, well, I think Britain's absolutely got this wrapped up now in the bag. Look at that, Britain's got a penalty advantage, and he's got a time advantage. Britain's absolutely got this in the bag as long as nothing out of the ordinary occurs. It's really going to be a question of how much Free Gloves' tyres really go off in these last few laps as to whether Morgan can collect the gap or not. And of course Morgan trying to stay within 6 seconds of Felix at the same time. So these are, although they're not on-track battles, they're battles in terms of penalties once they're taken into account. And it's very intriguing here to see how this one will end up. In terms of further behind, Tom AJ is looking in a pretty decent position. So is Prenz, because of course Bandobase has a lot of penalties. So Prenz potentially looking at P5. Both AlphaTauri looking at solid points gains here. In terms of the Constructors' Championship, a mixed day for Red Bull, to be honest. Britain comfortably out in the lead, but Tim Matt's outside the points when really there's only 11 cars technically still running. So I'll be disappointed with Tim Matz. I don't think he'll be too happy with his performance. The two Ferraris, Morgan and TV Sen, both in the points, 3rd and 8th at the moment. It's not too bad for Red Bull, it's not too bad for Ferrari either. You're looking at probably around the same amount of points here to be taken, so it will remain around 8 points going to the last 2 races. So still very much all up for grabs there as we come on to the penultimate lap of the race. And let's give Bryn a bit of airtime. We'll keep an eye on the gaps. At the moment as it stands, Bryn will win the race. You're looking at Morgan finishing second. No, Free Gloves, sorry. Finishing in second as it stands. So, of course, the other thing as well to note is that Free Gloves could still technically finish ahead of Felix too. Felix has got 12 seconds worth of penalties here. Let's get the gap to the leader up. So, yeah, currently got 8.5 seconds. This is going to be super close here. The way that it's worked out on penalties between Felix, Morgan and Free Gloves means it's going to be super close at the end here as to who gets the final 2 spots on the podium. And if Free Gloves can somehow bring this round to finish in second, he does keep his title hopes alive. So by staying clear of penalties and running this very audacious long medium tyre stint, Free Gloves may just have kept his title hopes alive here. The penalty difference is going to be so interesting. Let's get the penalties up so you can see what I'm talking about. This is mega close right now. This is all going to come down to the last lap of the race. And I reckon we're looking at less than a second here could split these three behind Bryn. Bryn starts the last lap of the race. He's absolutely cruising. He's got nothing to worry about. He's just got this last lap to negotiate, and he collects his third win of the season. As I said, the third win in the last 4 races. He's a 4-man in F7 right now. And he's also very much in the championship hunt as we go to Abu Dhabi next week. But who is going to take the final 2 spots on the podium? Free Gloves, I reckon Free Gloves might just get a spot on the podium here one way or the other. I've got to be honest, looking at the time difference, Free Gloves might just be about to get second place here. It all depends on what he loses through this technical part of the track. This is going to be mega close. I can't wait to see who gets this. Big moments in the title hunt here, ladies and gentlemen. Free Gloves, is he about to keep himself in the hunt? Is Felix about to take the lead back off Morgan, or is Morgan going to keep the championship lead going to Abu Dhabi? Here comes Bryn though. Round the stadium section, the parasol for the final time. The confetti goes up and they welcome home the race winner here. Bryn absolutely controlled the race and deservedly cruises to the win. TB looks like he's had an issue in the far sector, but let's follow these guys across the line. Felix comes across the line in second. Is he going to hold on to that is the question. Yes, he does. He beats Morgan just about, but his Free Gloves going to get a pair of them across the line. He goes. Free Gloves gets it. I don't believe it. Free Gloves gets second place. Felix is third. Morgan is 4. And wow, Tom AJ just beats Bando Biz by 4 thousandths of a second to 6. So incredible drama further down as well. But Tom AJ gets 6th place. Nicely done. Prens finishes 5th. We've got Game Freaker who's come across the line in 8th. Great effort from him. Howdy is 9th. I think he nearly hit a wall there coming out the last corner. TB Sen had some issues on the last lap. He's got a puncture. That explains TB Sen's problems. He's got a puncture, but he will get the final point in 10th. But that's a potentially a major blow to Ferrari and the Constructors. Red Bull here will have got the gap down to just 1 point, if my maths is correct, going to Abu Dhabi. So very nicely done. And Ferrari Red Bull battle continues. And I'm just going to try and work out. Obviously, stewards' inquiries can change the results, although I don't think there's too much here that will change, if I'm being completely honest. But in terms of the championship, if I'm absolutely right in saying, Morgan will lead on 82 points. Felix will be second on 81. Bryn will be up to third. No, actually, yeah, Bryn will be up to third on 71. With Free Gloves up to 4th on 68. So that would mean just 14 points separating the top 4 drivers going to Abu Dhabi. That's absolutely insane, and just 1 point between Morgan and Felix as well. Oh, this race is only... It wasn't a thriller, I'll admit, at times, but it certainly meant that the title race is going to be absolutely crazy in these last 2 races. Bryn takes the win, fully deserved. Free Gloves, despite his fastest lap being nowhere near the pace of everyone else, a one-stop strategy and a lack of penalties means he takes second. Felix is in third. We've got Morgan in 4th. Prenz, a good solid effort from him in 5th. Tom AJ in 6th. Bando Biz 7th. Game Freak 8th. Powdy 9th. And TV Sen takes the final point with Tim Matz just outside the points in 11th. And Mark's AI doing the race in 12th. With the 3 DNFs, Hulkenberger, Sam and Paco Suarez. So there you go. We've got just 1 point separating the top 2 in both the drivers and the constructors battles going to Abu Dhabi. This is going right to the wire. I cannot wait to see how this unfolds. And, well, it's going to be tough to call this one now for the final 2 races as to which way this is going to go. But that's just how we like it. That will be it for the F7 stream. I really hope you have enjoyed it. A quick driver of the day, actually. I almost forgot. Driver of the day vote. I've got to give it to Free Gloves. for me. That incredible one-stop strategy and not picking up any penalties to get second place. He had no real right to be in second place if you look at pure pace, but the strategy he did and the cleanliness with his lack of warnings has won him back second place, and I can't say any fairer than 3 Gloves deserves driver of the day. So that's my driver of the day for that one. And yeah, be sure to keep an eye out on PSGL. We've got the top 6 PlayStation tiers running tomorrow evening at 7 PM and 8 PM. I'll be back in the commentary box with Felix for F4 tomorrow evening at 7 PM GMT. Be sure to join us for that. But from me and from the F7 grid that was here this evening, it's goodbye, and we'll catch you on the flip side.